This is CD1, Track 1, Little Red Riding Hood. When you hear this sound, turn the page.
Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, there was a little girl who lived with a mother in a little house at the edge of the woods. The little girl was so helpful and kind that her grandmother, who lived on the other side of the woods, made her a pretty red cape with a bright red hood. The little girl wore her pretty red cape all the time, so everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day, her mother asked Little Red Riding Hood to take a basket of fruit to her grandmother. Little Red Riding Hood was happy to do this, and so she put on her pretty red cape with a bright red hood and set off. Her mother said goodbye from the door and then called out, "Be careful! Don't talk to any strangers you meet along the way." Little Red Riding Hood smiled and waved goodbye. It was a pretty day. Little Red Riding Hood skipped happily along the path until she met the wolf. "Well, hello, my dear," said the wolf. "Where are you going today?" Little Red Riding Hood didn't want to have a long conversation, so she just said, "I'm going to my grandmother's house," and she hurried on her way. But that was all the wolf needed to hear. He took a shortcut through the woods and soon arrived at grandmother's house. The wolf knocked politely, and grandmother called, "Who's there?" "It's Little Red Riding Hood, grandmother," said the wolf in a high voice. "I've got a basket of fruit for you." Grandmother opened the door and bam! The wolf jumped in. He said, "I've got you now." But just then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw Little Red Riding Hood coming along the path. So quickly, before grandmother could make a sound, the wolf locked her in the closet. The wolf put on grandmother's nightcap and got into bed. When Little Red Riding Hood knocked on the door, the wolf said, "Who's there?" Little Red Riding Hood said, "It's Little Red Riding Hood, grandmother. I've got a basket of fruit for you." "Come in, my dear," said the wolf. "I'm sick in bed with a cold. That's why my voice sounds so gruff." And so Little Red Riding Hood went into the house. Little Red Riding Hood went over to the bed to give the fruit to her grandmother. "Why, grandmother," said Little Red Riding Hood, "what big eyes you have." "All the better to see you with, my dear," said the wolf. "And grandmother," said Little Red Riding Hood, "what big ears you have." "All the better to hear you with, my dear," said the wolf. "And oh, grandmother, what big teeth you have," said Little Red Riding Hood. "All the better to eat you up with," shouted the wolf, and he jumped out of bed. Oh, how the wolf roared! He started to chase Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood ran out of the house, shouting, "Help! Help! Help!" But luckily, a woodcutter who was working nearby heard her shouting and ran to see what was the matter. When he saw the wolf chasing Little Red Riding Hood, the woodcutter ran after the wolf and tried to hit him with an axe. The wolf was really a terrible coward, ran off into the woods yelping with fear, and is probably still running. Little Red Riding Hood and the woodcutter went back to the house. Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother thanked the woodcutter a million times for scaring away the wolf. Then they all sat down and had some fruit. And of course, Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother lived happily ever after.
Okay, friends, I hope you enjoyed our Little Red Riding Hood story. Also for today, I have one of our Little Red Riding Hood activity pages. So for both sides of this page, it wants you to match the pictures by drawing an underline with your red crayon, both sides. So you need to find a red crayon, and then like for this first row, it's Little Red Riding Hood's hood. So you need to figure out which one. So this one matches because it's red. So you would start at the dot and you go from left to right and you'd underline it because it matches. Would you do this one? Because that's green. How about that one? Because that's blue. But this one? Because that's red. So you'd go down here and you draw an underline. Okay, and then you do the red, you do the matching for the apples, the boots, and the hat. And then on the other side, you do it for the fire truck, the paint, the apple, and the mitten. Okay. Again, I hope you enjoyed our story, and I sent home your Little Red Riding Hood books so you can follow along as well.